witnesses unto him throughout the world, whether at home or abroad, wherever. God said we will have that power, and we have that through the Holy Spirit inside of us. But understand that when Jesus told them that, no one had ever done that before. No one knew what it meant to be sealed by the Holy Spirit. And so when 40 days later came and they received the Holy Spirit in Acts, they were the pioneers of the church. Peter preaches the first message the church will ever hear. 3,000 people are added that day immediately through the preaching of Peter as he preaches the very first words the church would ever hear. And they were pioneers, and they went in not really knowing everything that that was going to happen, but they just went about to do it. And then later on come men who were also faithful, like Stephen, who is a martyr in front of Saul, and really is the first witness to Saul of who Christ really is. And so Saul sees Stephen die, and then later on you have a man named Barnabas who is also a faithful man, and Barnabas is sent all over the place to do a lot of different things, and he ends up being the one who brings Saul after Saul's conversion. He's the one who goes and finds him and brings him in, because nobody else wanted to go find Saul, because Saul had been so horrible in the lives in his previous life before he was saved. You guys know the stories there. And so after their journeys, we read here in verse 15, 25, chapter 15, verse 25, 26, it says this: "It seemed good unto us." Now that you got to understand where we're at, this is the apostles talking. They were finally getting together with Paul and Barnabas, and a lot of things have happened. And so it says that, but I just want you to see how they're described. It says, "It seemed good unto us, being assembled with one accord, to send chosen men unto you, with our beloved Barnabas and Paul, men that who have hazarded their lives for the name of our Lord Jesus Christ." Before we get into it, I want to write down in your first blanks the description of a pioneer. What I wrote in here: those who readily take on the adventure of exploring the unknown with the expectation of difficulty and danger. Let me know if you didn't get all that. Those who readily take on the adventure of exploring the unknown with the expectation of difficulty and danger, and the anticipation of success and reward. So basically, they know that no adventure is going to happen without some sort of risk. Otherwise, it's not an adventure. They are happy to embark on endeavors others think risky, and joyfully spend their lives in pursuit of their dreams and visions. So you write those things down. Those who readily take on the adventure of the unknown with the expectation of difficulty and danger, and the anticipation of success and reward. They're happy to embark on the endeavors others think risky, and joyfully spend their lives in pursuit of their dreams and visions. Some definitions here for introduction. These are just so you can understand what we're talking about. The word hazard as a verb means to put something or someone at risk of being lost. And these people have put at risk their own lives. So hazard is to put something or someone, basically yourself, at being lost or at the risk of it. The next word is indomitable. It basically means impossible to be subdued. You're not able to be defeated. That's what it means to be indomitable. You're not capable of being dominated by anything. Which is what Paul says, if you ever read through as he talks about himself, "I will not allow myself to be brought under the power of anything, even good things." He said, I wouldn't, in his case, he was talking about things that were fine to do, but sometimes would cause other people to stumble. He says, I'm not going to allow anything to power my life, but in anything, whether trial, whether persecution, regardless, he was not going to allow himself to be subdued. Visionary, or being a visionary, is someone who plans for the future with imagination and wisdom. You write that down, visionary. Someone who plans for the future with imagination and with wisdom. Resilience, the ability to recover quickly from difficulties. Another single word you can write in there is toughness. Another word that we don't use a whole lot, but the word grit. Not like grits you eat, but if you have grit, it was a word meant to mean you were just somebody who you get kicked in the dirt 7 times and would get back up again. Kind of like what Proverbs says. It kind of goes back to being indomitable. You would not allow things. It's not just not being able to be subdued, but you get back up and you easily shake off the problems. Unconventional, the last word, not based on or conforming to what is generally done. Not based on or conforming to what is generally done. Not every pioneer is successful, but every one of them would rather die attempting greatness and live to achieve mediocrity, if I can even say the own words I wrote down here. But in Acts chapter 15:25, these men have become known as those who hazard their lives for the name of Jesus Christ. Barnabas and Paul, 2 men who besides anything else, this is what they're known for at this point in time. We all want to be remembered for something great, or at least we don't want to be remembered for something awful, right? We all want something to be different in the world around us when we die, and we want to look back and see something different. It should be obvious that these men did not come by this reputation by sitting on the couch, playing games, eating Doritos, or reading books, flipping through Instagram, or whatever might have been done at that time. They were not wasting their time. By this point, Barnabas has already sold his land to help the poor. He must have been a man of means, and you know the story of Ananias and Sapphira who lie about their land. But understand that started with Barnabas selling his property to help those who were in need. And only people who owned anything in that point in time were people of wealth. So Barnabas, when he started out at least, had great wealth, and he sells it, and that's how he gets the name Barnabas. His name was something else. I should have looked that up, but his name was, they called him Barnabas because that means the son of consolation, or someone who comes beside and helps people. He came by as almost a nickname for him. So his name's not actually Barnabas, but his reputation was that he was a man who would always pick people up, which is why you see him going to get Saul, which is why you see him and Paul getting an argument later on in Acts over John Mark. Because Paul was a man of kind of a type A personality, and Barnabas is type B. He was much more concerned about being in the background helping, and Paul was go, go, go. And in Paul's mind, John Mark was someone unreliable, and that's just how some personalities are. And Paul was always, if it was going to hinder him, he threw it away. And in this case, he was wrong for what he thought John Mark might not be able to do, and Barnabas obviously sees it, and God used those two, that problem. But still, you see these men's personalities were so different, yet for so long they worked together, and that God uses them in their specific fields. But Barnabas has already sold his house to help the poor. He's seen the gospel open to the Gentiles through Peter. He was the one sent to Antioch to confirm the first Gentile church, which all of us have been affected by here today. It was a major part of the awakening that happened there. He's the one who goes finds Paul. And after this, Paul and Barnabas are part of the explosion at Antioch. And then they go on a missions trip around Asia Minor and just starting churches all over the place. And they are just traveling, and they are having victories and conflict. Many believe, yet many do not. And some of them receive them gladly, and some of them do not. And they go through things. And some people mocked and scorned them. Some of them praised and blessed them. Some people tried to even worship them. I think it was in Ephesus, where they go out there and they heal somebody. Maybe it was not, I'm getting that wrong, but they go out and heal a man, and they see them do that, and they think their gods come down to men. And they have to, it says they even run out in the middle of them screaming, "Don't do this. We're here to show you a different way. We're trying to show you who God is. It's not us." So even people try to worship them, and other people try to kill them. They even tried to stone Paul, but God had other plans. But they had a vision of what could be, and they believed it could be reality, and they were determined that their mission would not be complete, or would be completed, and would not allow anything to deny them their success. And so the number one thing a pioneer, as you think about those who kind of moved out west through the wilderness that was so unknown to them, and all the dangers, like Paul and Barnabas and the apostles moved into a spiritual age of unknown, where they didn't really know anything. They just did what God told them to do, and they just kept going until they either died or passed away. And they spent their lives hazarding themselves through this adventure God gave them, not knowing what the next day would hold, and yet now we read their reputations. And the first thing a pioneer must have is vision. Because a pioneer must be able to see beyond where he is and see what can be done somewhere else. He must have a vision. And our vision obviously comes from God, but understand something. As I said earlier, we can't be sitting around waiting for flashing signs in the sky. God doesn't do that. He works through where you are, where you're at right now. You must be faithful in doing whatever you can find to do, and God will then start to direct you to somewhere else. But you must have vision. You must be where the pastor says, well, I don't have a lot to do, but you can wash these windows. You go and do that, and then when people walk in, you say, hey, how you doing? You greet them and say, I'm glad you're at church today. And you use every opportunity you have while washing windows to glorify God. And then someday someone will say, I was feeling really down. It was the last day on this earth I was going to take my life, and I walked in here, and there was some kid washing a window or something, whatever the pastor may give you to do, and he just said something to me, and it just changed my entire life. It could be that simple. It doesn't have to be complicated, but you have to have vision. You have to see past what seems like doesn't mean anything and know that it can mean something for God. So a pioneer must have vision. He must see what can be done and know what he wants. When we talk about this, you are part of this thing here. You need to have a vision yourself. Far too many Christians really have no idea what they want, and consequently they never reach beyond mediocrity to realize that God has given them so much more. Christians really have lost their imaginations. And it's no less true than this generation. We don't think about, what could God do with my life? There are so many opportunities and potentials in our lives for anything. God can do anything with any one of you that he wants to do. You need to start imagining what really could God do, and then take every opportunity to try and move towards those things. As I said, the pioneers of America's expansion, they didn't have, they were a special kind of people. They didn't have any maps. They didn't have any roads. They had no way of knowing what lay ahead of them. They just set out with a vision in their head of a new homestead, a ranch, a gold mine, maybe a city, maybe a town. Literally, they walked into a field one day when they got to where they're going of rocks and dirt. And they said, you know what? I'm going to put a house here. I'm going to put a field here. I'm going to put a barn over here. And I'm going to put a fence over here. I'm going to make something out of nothing. They could see past the barren wilderness of things, the problems that are there that most people would look at. How are you going to do that? Some people today like, all right, I want you to build a house. And they walk in the woods. Well, I don't see any, there's no 2x4s or nails or hammers, And a visionary, a pioneer didn't say that. He's like, well, I'm going to make boards. I'm going to cut down trees. I'm going to clear the land. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to get calluses and blisters. My back's going to hurt. I'm going to bust my fingers open. I'm going to sweat to death. I'm going to have to shoot the mountain lion that's checking me out over here, And there's all kinds of things that could be going through their minds, but they're happy to do it because they can see what can be made out of the dirt and then the forest around them or wherever they may be. They have a vision and they can see these things. And as I said, they looked into this barren wilderness and without any previous examples or point of references. As I said, we're always looking for someone else to kind of copy. We're always looking I'm just going to copy someone. I'm just going to follow something that someone else did. And we've lost innovation. It's not, obviously we want you to follow us in our example, but in your field, wherever you end up at, you're going to have to do things a little different. I know Brother Terry, his testimonies before, he went to college at, he had to change some things if he was in order to reach the people that he went to, because just the way that people had done things forever, he just seen that God had given him a different vision, a different way of reaching the people that he was sent to. And we all need to be innovators. And we see this in the world, but the church seems to be lacking these things because we think that it needs to be written down for someone to tell us what to do. You think about Abraham. You also turn there, but Hebrews chapter 11, verse 8 and 10 says this: by faith Abraham, when he was called to go out to a place which he should afterwards receive for inheritance, obeyed. He went out not knowing whither or where he went. For he looked for a city to have foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Now that's a man of vision. God said, hey, I want you to leave your house, your parents, your family, and everything. I just want you to go. Where are we going? Don't worry about it. Just go. And he just packed up and left. It says he left not knowing whither he went. He didn't know where he was going, but he looked for a city that had foundations, whose builder and maker is God. These are things that he never realized in his life. He just went out and followed God until the day that he died. He was a man of vision. He was a real pioneer. He just walked out of his familiar surroundings. And that's our problems. We cannot look past what we're familiar with. He envisioned what could be, even though God had not revealed it yet. And he only knew that God said, go. And so he left to seek a city. And as I said, a quest he would not fulfill even until his death, really, until he actually meets God and the things that happen. But it takes vision to see past your familiar surroundings when God tells you to move, because you don't always know where your destination is. Sometimes God is only going to give you enough light for today, and tomorrow is unknown. And we all have a fear of what we don't know. But a pioneer has a vision that overlooks his fear and sees a place undiscovered. It excites him. Yeah, it's fearful, but hey, what am I going to do? Sit here and do nothing? I can see beyond the mountains. I can see. Think about, I was reading about Lewis and Clark when I looked at these things. I'm not really going to put a lot in here, but man, they went down rivers, went over mountains, through passes. There were storms. They lost all their stuff in the creek the one time. And what was her name? Yeah, I don't want to say that. I don't want to try and say it. Yeah, her. And it said he credits her for thinking quickly. Because, I don't know, for whatever reason, him, Lewis, and Clark, those two guys, and the rest of the people didn't think fast enough, and she was the one who jumped in the water, pulled all their stuff out, saved most of their stuff, and said it was her. He credits her for thinking like that, because she had lived out there, and she knew, and, in their heads, oh, man, it's all lost, it's in the creek, and she just went, jumped in, grabbed it out. Why? Because she endangered herself. She hazarded her life to save the crew that was going out there, but they went through so many things just to expand and write maps. I mean, how much more important are the things that we're called to do? And these people have given their lives and hazarded themselves to write some maps, for most people, for no other reason, just the excitement of exploring. And we've lost that as Christians, especially this generation, the excitement of just going and doing something new and something that's unknown. And there needs to be a revival, that kind of pioneer spirit in us. We need to be those of courageous young people who are scared to death and love it. There needs to be people who are willing to get into the work, not knowing the end result, but just trusting God that He's going to be there. Because there's always going to be fear, whether of the unknown, whether of failure, whether loneliness, or any manner of things. But those who history remembers are those who disregard their fear for the vision of success. And let me tell you something. Heaven will remember those who have a vision to overlook danger and difficulty and see a city and a village or an island shining bright with the truth of Christ. That's who heaven will remember. We remember them right now. Right? We remember the ones who went before us. And you will be remembered one day for what you do for Christ. And it can be only worth it all when it's done. But you have to be able to see past your fear and see past something that's so barren that you're like, I don't know how this situation can work out. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how to get to where I'm going. But I'm going to put my foot out the front door and I'm just going to walk. Whether that's literally or spiritually speaking, whatever it is, there's got to be that pioneer spirit. I've been talking to, and I meant to kind of introduce what I was doing, but you guys know I've been the youth pastor and associate pastor of Bible Baptist Church in St. Augustine, Florida for the past 8 years, but the last 4 years, God's been dealing with me about doing what He wants me to do next, and now my family and I are moving to Asheville, North Carolina to plant a church. Out of nothing, on the east side there, where there's not much going on, where they're starting to expand, and I've never done that before. I don't know hardly anybody there. I've thought about it. I'm leaving a job that I'm secure in, a ministry I've already had for 8 years, and I'm going to a place where I don't hardly know anybody. I've never been there before. I don't know how to start a church in the sense of like, the step-by-step program. There is no step-by-step program, by the way. And that's what you really need to learn that. And maybe that's part of really the whole thrust of what I'm trying to say. There are no step-by-step, 1, 2, 3, do this, this, and this, and you'll be a successful Christian. It's those who simply say, whatever God gives me today, I'm going to do it as best as I can. The next day, I'm going to do the same thing. But for me to kind of step into this, it was to say, hey, I don't know what it is, but I'm just going to go do it. And I've been talking to a pastor from Spring Hill, and he planted his church about 10 years ago, and he said the same thing. We've lost, as church planters, the pioneer spirit, because many of them just want to, if they don't have the funds, if they don't have the programming, they don't have everything down, all the the I's dotted and the T's crossed, or however they say that, they just don't want to go. And we need to be those who are willing to step out into nothing, trusting that God will be there. We have vision to see past what our eyes see and see what can be. Number 2, a pioneer must have faith. Because as important as it is to see past distractions, to imagine things that can happen, it is only a fool's dream if you don't have the faith to believe the vision is possible. It doesn't mean anything if you sit around and think about what could happen all day and never have faith to step out. Vision must be mixed with faith. You must believe your vision can be true. Abraham never went back home because his faith told him, even though he never saw it completely, that it would still happen, that God had promised it and he was able to perform it. That's what Hebrews tells us about Abraham. He believed that he who had promised was able also to perform it. And the end of Hebrews chapter 11 says, all these received their testimonies by way of faith. I'm paraphrasing. By way of faith, not receiving the promises, because they never saw Christ. They never saw those things. Peter says that in 2 Peter, says they tried to see it, but they could not see the fulfillment of the promise. They just knew that God had something, and they kept walking. And we are the results, because the Old Testament pointed to Christ. Christ came. He did those things that they spoke about and we read about today. I'm going to switch examples here. A couple things maybe you might know. How many of you guys know the name Sir Richard Branson? You know? 2 people. Have you ever heard of Virgin Airlines? Big red wing that says Virgin on it. Virgin Records, Virgin America, Virgin World something group or something or other. He started by 16 years old, he started a magazine business. 20 years old, he had a mail order record business, which you guys have no idea what that means. Basically, people sent you a letter and said, hey, send me a record, and you sent them a money order. So you guys don't, like I said, have any idea what that is. At 22, he opened a chain of record stores at 34 years old, which is a couple of years older than I am. He sets up Virgin Atlantic Airlines at age 34. Age 54, he has Virgin Galactic, which is a company that is aimed to take people into space. At 54 years old, he started at 16. He was a kid he wanted to do something more than anybody else had done, so he just started. Elon Musk, you know who that is? You know what Tesla is? All right, well, he's the guy behind that. He's only 47 years old today. Sir Richard Branson is worth $5.1 billion. Elon Musk is worth $20 billion. At 12 years old, he teaches himself computer programming. At 17, he goes to university. 28, he sells his first web company for $346 million. He creates X.com, which becomes PayPal, which eBay buys for $1.5 billion when he's 31 years old, which is my age. He's my age, and he makes $1.5 billion in his life. Why? Because he started something that no one had done before. No one knew what was going on when the internet and those things kind of started. Now he is the one who does SpaceX. If you're in Florida, you see his rockets go up all the time. If you're watching, he shot one of his roadsters into space to go to Mars or something a couple months ago, and he has those rockets that float back down to land, just like the movies always showed. And he also has the vision of sending people into space. Why? Because these were only movies. These were things that people had visions of, but no one ever thought were possible. And these men said, well, I'm going to make it possible. And they worked until they're creating these things. And then Jeff Bezos, you know who that is, Amazon.com. He's worth $143 billion. He's the richest man in the world. He also has, Blue Origin, wants to send people into space. The point is, they've seen things that we only watched on TV, that people only thought were fantasy, and they saw, hey, but you can never actually do that. And they're like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to do it. And obviously SpaceX is probably the most successful in shooting things into space. They're basically the ones who took over when NASA was shut down. But they, at 12 years old, Elon Musk had an idea. And he didn't see sending rockets into space when he was 12 years old. But he saw he could do something more with his life. And what are we doing? We're sitting around wasting our time playing video games, eating chips. When the call that we have, and that's why I'm using worldly examples in this moment, because these people have done these things and innovated where other people had never gone before for things that one day will pass away. Sure, they're worth billions of dollars now. What is that going to do for them? And what can we accomplish in our lives if we can look past where we're at and do these? These people were pioneers in the field of business. They looked past what was regarded as fantasy and they believed it could happen. And we're all affected by these guys in some way. I'm pretty sure everyone in here has probably bought some off of Amazon at least once, or at least looked on it. And you're affected by their everything. They have affected the world. Young ages, they say, I'm going to do something different. And you can affect the world for Christ today, now. You need to start imagining what I can do in my school, in my home, for my sisters and my brothers and my mother and my father, my aunts and my uncles and my cousins and my enemies and my friends, my church, another country, my city, my town, my neighborhood. What can I do? Stop looking at what other people are doing. Stop thinking about, well, no one does anything. Well, you do it. Because the pioneer doesn't look at what can't be done. He looks at what can be. These people have no spiritual eternal interests, and their businesses will never bring salvation, peace, or unity to anybody. They think it will. They're all philanthropists. They spend money on global hunger, global warming. They go for clean water for the poor in villages, and they do good all around the world. But they never touch the souls of people. They are entrepreneurs. They take risks. They put it all on the table to make their visions reality because they believed in themselves that they could make it happen. And if people in the world can make those kind of things happen simply by sitting down one day and saying, I'm going to do this and accomplish it, how much more can we, if we're filled with the power of God, accomplish the things that He's called us to do? As we said earlier this week, the only thing that's going to restrict the explosion of power that God can do through our lives is us. Because we don't think we can do it. We don't think that we can. And these people, I don't know if they thought they could. They simply said, I'm going to try. I'm not going to fail because I never started. And that's what we need to get back to. They do these things for corruptible crowns, as Paul says. Abraham never went back, as I said, because his faith told him there was something in front of him, and he acted on it. Number 3, a pioneer, he must be determined or have determination. It is obvious that whether a pioneer, an entrepreneur, or an apostle, even if they have vision and faith at the outset, the amount of difficulty and risk that's involved in making visions reality requires determination. There are a lot of people who can get to faith, at least at first. They have a vision, they believe that God can do it in a small way, and they begin to work, and then difficulties come, and it pushes on them. And then many of these men failed in many things. Bill Gates failed in many things before he became what he is today. Any of the people that you know today, every single person that you know that's famous today in any part of the world has failed many, many times in everything that they've ever done. There's never been a soul on this planet who ever woke up one day and knew how to do whatever it is that they become known for. Everybody has failed. It's through failure, determination says, I'm going to keep on going. Determination pushes on when the vision God has given us doesn't immediately come to fruition. Because many people will get in their field, and then You can ask any of these missionaries. The problem they have is missionaries going through all the things they need to do in the States. They go to the country for 3 years or less, and they come home, and they stop. Right? I mean, is that not what happens? I've seen it. I met a man who went, he was supposed to go to a country, and he went there for a survey trip, and never went back. I see people talk about opening this halfway house. It was just south of us here in South Carolina. They talk about opening the halfway house, which is a ministry that helps people coming out of prison getting back into the world. And because the men didn't always do what they told them to do, they closed it down after 6 months. And my head said, what did you think was going to happen? You have people coming out of prison, they're not always going to do what you want them to do. And they went around and told everybody, this is the will of God. We built a house. People of God put money into this ministry, believing that these men had really been called by God. And 6 months later, they're gone? Why? They had a vision, they had a thought, it sounded good, and they started to step out. But when it got difficult, they got pushed down, got their feelings hurt, got their knee dirty a little bit, and they went home. And that can't happen anymore. Abraham waited 25 years for the promise of Isaac. You got to count it up. If you read Genesis chapter 12 to when Isaac is born, there's 25 years. Abraham waits 25 years for God until he's 100 years old. He's 75 when God tells him, hey, I'm going to give you a son. He's like, all right, great. Next year, well, I ain't got it yet. Next year, I ain't got it yet. And that's why he fails along the way. And we always kind of get on him because he failed with Sarah and her handmaid and all those other things that kind of happened in between. But I think that was like 10 years later. He's 10 years later. He said, God, I don't have a son. And he doesn't see it until 20. He's 100 years old. David desired to build a temple of God, but God said no. Right? Did he sit down and cry? No, he just started picking up stuff so Solomon could do it. Right? He saw a vision of what he said, I love my God, I want to build him a house. And God said, no, you won't do it because you're a man of war. I want a man of peace to build it. He said, your son will build it. And he said, okay, I'm going to do everything I can to prepare, to break the ground so that the one coming behind me can do it. Some of us will break ground for others. Other of us are going to go into fields where the ground's already been broken. As Jesus said, he tells even his disciples, you're coming into labors that other people have started, talking about the Old Testament saints. But in every case, these people push on. Paul tried to go to Asia. If you read, I think it's Acts chapter 16, Paul tries to go to Asia. The Spirit says no. You're saying the Spirit didn't let Paul take the gospel somewhere? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm going to Asia. And the Spirit said no. I'm like, all right. He said, I'm going to Bithynia. And the Spirit said no. He's like, all right. And he just kept on walking. He ends up at Troas, and God gives him a vision of a man of Macedonia, which is what that song says, the Macedonian call. A vision of a man. He says, come to us. Bring us the gospel. And then he said, all right, that's where we're going. And he kept on going. What if he stopped when the Spirit said no? He's like, all right, I'm done. I'm just going to go home and make tents again. Well, he went to Bithynia and he said, you know what? I tried to go to Asia. I tried to go to Bithynia. I'm done. I don't know what you want from me, God. You won't let me do what you told me you want me to do. Are you just done with me? He doesn't do that. He keeps on going. He's determined. The man continued until a vision became a reality. David had the vision, as I said. David had the vision to see beyond his own life and was determined to break the ground for his son to succeed. There are many pioneers who have explored the mountain passes out west. As I was reading all this stuff, many of the people who went out there, the first people who explored the mountain passes, got caught in the snowstorms and they didn't find the right way. And they sacrificed themselves so that someone else would know, hey, don't go that way. And then there were certain people who would go up there by themselves and they would get through and they'd climb these things. And then when they started to build roads, they would go up there and blow these mountains apart with the power of dynamite and those things to make way for other people later on. And now we drive through those mountains like it ain't nothing. But it didn't start that way. Somebody had to make the map. Someone had to make the idea. Someone one day, and that was crazy, I think it's the Eisenhower Tunnel, I think it is. It's out there somewhere. It goes through, and it's a tunnel that goes through a mountain of solid rock. How many of you guys walk out and you would see a mountain of just a huge mountain of giant rock and think, you know what? I'm going to build a tunnel through that. Who says that? Somebody did. I can't remember the guy's name. I should have wrote it down. Someone walked out and looked at it and said, hey, that's a big rock. Let's put a hole in it. And like I said, I did a whole bunch of research. I couldn't put all in here, but I think they did like 75 to 200 pounds of dynamite per explosion, which got them, I think, 6 inches at a time. And then they found out when they got in the middle of it that there's a fault line running right through the middle of the mountain, which would make it unstable if you don't know what that means. Did they go home? No. They looked at it and, you know what? We're going to put little tunnels around that section and fill them full of concrete. And then they did that, and that took forever for them to do that. They would not be denied the hole in the mountain so that other people could go through it. And it sounds foolish, but we experience the fruits of the labor of these men and the vision of these people who looked and saw what others would account as something impossible. And really, if you think about today, it would seem stupid, but they say, I'm going to do this. And they hit a snag, hey, there's a fault line. This thing could fall in on everybody driving through this thing. And he says, you know what, who cares? We're going to find out a way to fix that. And they did. And now everybody drives through this gigantic Eisenhower tunnel with, all these little side things for the maintenance people literally live there. And we drive through it in a few minutes. We don't think about the years and the sacrifice and the problems and all the things I went into. But someone one day on a mountainside looked across and said, I'm going to put a hole in that mountain. That's where it started. Spark of a vision. I can put a hole in that. How? I don't know yet, but I'm going to figure it out. And that's what I'm talking about. You don't always know what it's going to take. You have a vision, you have faith it can happen, and then when you come across the fault line in the middle of your plans, you're like, well, let's figure out how to fix it. Instead of saying, well, I'm just going home. Like those, like we said. Many of the pioneers, as I said, gave their lives so that other people could come behind them easily. Whatever the mission, the pioneer will see it done or die trying. They see what could be done, they believe it can be done, and they're determined to see it done. The last thing, I'm probably going a little long here, but the last thing, a pioneer must have perseverance. And that's where the word grit comes in. This is extended determination. This is the indomitable spirit of the pioneer. This is the raging rivers, the dense forests, the dangerous animals, the high cliffs and snowdrifts, and the things that frighten average people. These things are the things that excite and thrill the pioneer. Hey, I'm going to figure out a way to get over that river. I'm going to figure out a way to get over that mountain. If there's a lion over there, I'm going to shoot it. If there's a bear, I'm going to stab it. I don't know if I'm going to stab it, but I'm just trying to switch up my analogy there. Whatever you want to do, I'm going to throw rocks at it. I don't know. And it's the spirit of when you used all your ammo, you pick up the end, you use your gun. As a club, your club breaks, you pick up rocks. It's a person who won't go down. That's what it means to win. You see it in athletes all the time. They might break something, they'll crack a rib. They won't let anyone know. They'll have something torn. They're like, I'm not going to tell anyone because I just want to win. And the pioneer, he sees past everything so that he can win. And like I said, these people did it for things much less important. And we follow in the footsteps of missionaries who over the centuries have cut their way through jungles. They've traveled through scorching deserts. They've dared to take on the barren wilderness and the frozen tundras just to take the light of the truth of Christ into any place that remains in darkness. And that's what you're called to do. Our generation is missing this kind of imagination, this kind of courage and determination and perseverance, an attitude that not only says, here am I, send me today, but will not allow the vision God has given them to be denied. I will not be defeated. They will not stop me from doing what God has called me to. I will put a hole through that mountain. I will take the gospel to the kid across the cafeteria. I'll take the gospel to Africa, to my neighbor, to Russia, to wherever. I don't care whether it's across the street, around the world, across the lake. It doesn't matter. It says, I'm going to do this thing, and it's going to be done. And we, like I said, all of us kind of sit around and wait for a lot of us sit around and wait for the hole in the mountain to open by itself. And thinking about it in that sense, it ain't going to happen, right? It takes a vision, it takes a plan. It takes you getting up there one day and finally, think about it. He could have a vision, he could have all this stuff, he could draw charts, he could make videos, he could do all this stuff, and then just sit there and think, all right, let's go. You know, where's this hole at? Sooner or later, someone's got to go to the wall and start the first hammer swing. Someone's got to do it. Somewhere along the line, it's got to come down to you actually doing. I will not be defeated. Can't stop, won't stop. We need a generation that looks past the meaningless distractions of lust and self and worldly success and fear, and have a vision of a school, of a home, of a neighborhood, of a church, of a city, of a nation, of a country full of the glorious light of hope and peace and love of God. And they will not be denied it. They will not be denied it. Where will the stories come from that will inspire the generations behind us? If we won't today be as the pioneers were then, to go through the things that we don't understand and know and fear, to be able to come out the other side and say, hey, I survived. I got some scars, but I'm proud of them. Who will inspire those who come behind us? I want someone over the years from now in their preaching service to say, let me tell you about the great Jeremiah Walker. Or the Tony Gonzalez, right? Or the Stephen Lyons, or the Rochelle Milo, or the Hannah Brodsky, or the Megan Latos. Let me tell you what they did. This story in this book that they wrote in their old age, about all the adventures that they went on for Christ. Let me tell you what they did. And then they're sitting in their service 100 years from now saying the same thing I'm saying. This is what you need to do. And where's it going to come from? Unless we're these kind of pioneers. This spirit that will not allow itself to be defeated. I want heaven to remember your names as those who hazarded their lives for the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And you have the potential to shake the eternities of millions of people. In this room, you can shake the eternities of 1 million people if you're only willing to say, here am I, send me, and be as dedicated and committed to God's vision as all those pioneers and these entrepreneurs were to their visions. They do it for things that will pass away, and what we're doing is affecting eternity. All their efforts will be gone. What will you leave? You're going to leave something if, only if, you're a person, a man and a woman, or a woman, man or woman, hopefully all of you, hopefully every single one of you. The only reason that history and heaven will remember you is if you're a pioneer who has vision to see past what everybody else says is impossible. To say, I'm going to put a hole through that mountain, whether it kills me or not. I'm going to take the gospel to whoever God sends me to, whether it kills me or not. You have vision, you have faith to believe the vision is possible. You have determination, I'm going to do this thing, and you persevere through everything that comes your way. And that's how you succeed. That's how the generation behind us will know that there is a God in heaven that changes lives. That's how the world will know that we were here. Otherwise, you can go back and just do what you always done. I can go back and just say, you know what, it's too much stuff. I don't feel like doing this anymore. And I'll just leave Asheville to itself. What do I care? I'm saved. You don't remember those people's names. They're not pioneers. They're the ones that stayed in the cities on the coast. I'm not going out west. You crazy? The mountain lions will eat me. Fine, stay there. I'll do it. Now you know, Lewis Clark, all those other people, Daniel Boone, David Crockett, those jokers. Crazy people is what the world calls them. But they just simply were men who said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go out here, I'm going to build something, and I will not allow anyone to take it from me. And that's what we need to be. Heads bowed and eyes closed, I hope. As we've been talking about this week, number one is the barrier.